Looks like severe weather is going to be back here across portions of south central Dixie Valley as we get near May here. Looking at possibly an interesting pattern here. Be variable conditions for some severe weather late this week here. And as well, the SPC has already issued a 15% chance for day 4 and as well day 5. So very interesting pattern here. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So here's a look here at the day 4 outlook here, and we already have a very widespread 15% chance for severe weather, which means we are already at a slight risk at 2 out of 5 for the scale here for severe weather probability and likelihood. So we do have very widespread 15% chance there, including portions of Oklahoma and Texas, and then going as far east as portions of western Dixie Valley, including southern Mississippi and portions of Louisiana. So this actually includes around 24.3 million people, including big cities like Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, Fort Worth, as well including areas such as Alexandria, Louisiana, Lake Charles there, just to the south there. Actually, I think it's right on the border there of Jackson, as well including Oklahoma City, Norman. So it is including quite a lot of big cities here for the southern United States. Here. It does include areas where we typically see May severe weather right here across portions of the Tornado Alley, including Oklahoma there and Texas, as well back into the general April type region, including portions of western Dixie. So it's a very widespread threat for severe weather on Friday here, specifically going to be the Friday evening hours and overnight here. We're not going to be seeing like a storms firing off in the late morning near noon and then getting at its peak like at 4 or 5 o'clock. It's going to be the complete opposite. Going to start early, and that means severe weather kind of overnight. So it is going to be a pretty big overnight threat, sadly, for these areas here. Again, these areas have already been hit, specifically Louisiana and Mississippi, quite hard with overnight severe weather events within the past few weeks. And it looks like another one's going to be on its way here. And it's going to be kind of overnight. That's going to leave the next day, Saturday, to have another threat for severe weather. And this is a lot more towards the east here. We have a very widespread 15% chance, including 8.5 million people. And this includes more of the southeastern United States and Gulf of Mexico. So it includes areas like New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Montgomery, Mobile, and Columbus. So it's very similar to the last event we had here, where we had a 15% chance for the portion of the South Central and Western Dixie Valley. And the next day, we had another threat there for a portion of the Gulf Coast. So very similar scenario, and that's going to be a multi-day threat here. So again, looking at portions of the South Central and Southern Georgia, Southern Alabama, Southern Mississippi there, Eastern Louisiana, and Northern and Western Florida there, including portions of the Panhandle. So very widespread area in general. Over 30 million people to get impacted at least from now with a 15% chance. So already are over 30 million people at least at a slight risk. And this is again 4 and 5 days out here. So going to be very concerning here as we get a lot closer to these events here, whether they can get enhanced or even higher. So here's now a look here at the global European mall. So again, we're starting really watching out for that severe weather on Friday. On Friday specifically, the evening and overnight hours. So this is here the pattern we're going to be seeing here on the radar here, or MSLP, on Friday late morning here at 11 a.m. So there you got that low pressure right there. A specific one is going to bring in that severe weather. You got a cold front to the north there. You got the high pressure way up there into southern Canada. So we got the instability here as well. We got that Gulf moisture coming from the Gulf of Mexico there from the warm water. So we're going to start seeing some scattered storms across portions of Kansas, maybe Oklahoma. But again, it is going to be quite cold still within those areas. Maybe some lower 60s, maybe some upper 50s. The main threat for severe weather and we're actually for some actual severe weather would be obviously more towards the south there, including Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Mississippi, and even portions of Arkansas. Really, we'll be seeing a lot of favorable conditions there. But we still got some scattered storms as far north as Missouri and Kansas. But as you know, again, Friday at around 5 o'clock, that's when we can start seeing the first storms that are going to be severe to pop up there across the portion of the Texas there, Louisiana. We got a second low pressure there. So we got 2 low pressures. You're going to bring in a widespread front of severe weather kind of forming on that cold front, which is going to be towards the northwest there, high pressure up there near Montana. And it's going to bring some widespread thunderstorms with the most severe ones, like I did say, across Texas, Louisiana, even portions there of Arkansas, but we could still have some scattered storms there across Missouri and Kansas. And of course, that severe weather will continue as far as portions of northern and central Oklahoma. So we'll be watching out for some severe weather here overnight at 11 o'clock Eastern Time p.m. So 10 o'clock Central Time there for areas across Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas, making some slight severe weather. And if we're going to see any severe weather in Kansas, it will be in the southeastern portion there and even southwestern Missouri, may get included in that severe weather. So we're going to be seeing a general pretty widespread area for some severe weather on that day, kind of staying out of Arkansas, those higher elevations there near the Ozarks. But the big event mainly going to be towards kind of the deep south central Louisiana and portions of eastern Texas. That's where we're going to be seeing possibly our biggest threat for extreme severe weather, maybe some tornadoes, possibly hail and winds, and that's going to continue overnight there. Saturday morning, some big time severe weather likely across Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. Still some scarce severe weather there across portions of the south central and Ozarks. But as we now get later into Saturday afternoon, I'm going to increasingly watch the threat for some severe weather across portions like Alabama, Georgia, and as well portions of the northwestern portion of Florida. So that's going to be we're going to be watching out for some severe weather. We're not going to be seeing anything too crazy with this potential day 5. I do think the biggest day will most likely be day 4. That seems to be the best chance to have tornadoes and I guess big severe weather. Day 5 still already has a 50% chance. Day 5, already 5 days out, but I don't think it's going to be mainly a tornado threat. It most likely will be mainly a wind threat for at least a day 5 event. So nothing too crazy, tornadic outbreaks or anything like that, but we'll see some pretty intense storms there across Dixie Alley, specifically Alabama, Georgia. We'll be seeing kind of not really a big tornado threat, but still possibly at least a slight risk across that region. We still have 15% chance there, but the main day is definitely going to be including, of course, day 4 there, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Texas, and even portion there west from Mississippi. That's where we'll be watching for this tornado and some pretty significant severe weather. But let's go ahead and look at the conditions here. So like I did say, we do have a pretty significant cold front over the area right now. So how could there be severe weather just 3 days from now? I mean, we just saw snow as far north as far south as Oklahoma near Tulsa. We saw some snow showers there. So how can we possibly get severe weather in this area 3 days later, and not that, but let alone a 15% chance on day 4? I mean, that's already guaranteeing a slight risk and possibly a pretty significant threat for, at least significant chance for an enhanced risk. So how is this possible? Well, that cold front's going to obviously kind of weaken and kind of stay kind of a little bit more towards the Rockies and a little bit to the north here. I mean, that cold front's not going to stay there for whatever. I mean, we'll start to see some warmer temperatures moving up as early as the next 2 days there, the day before the main event here. So here's Thursday. We are seeing some pretty good temperatures there. Some widespread upper 60s and as well some lower 70s. So still a little bit below average across these regions here for considering late April. But I mean, it's still favorable enough. These temperatures are still favorable enough for some weather. But that's going to allow for those Cape values to build up throughout Thursday and Friday morning. And once you get now to Friday around 2 o'clock, we're seeing a lot warmer temperatures there, getting already in the upper 60s and lower 70s only by 2 o'clock here. So a little bit warmer on Friday and kind of see some widespread 80s across portions of Oklahoma there. So we'll be watching out for the central Oklahoma City area, portion of northern Texas by 4 o'clock. And we're kind of this time frame, it's kind of when that's everywhere going to start popping off here again. Really good temperatures, some widespread lower 70s, even some mid 70s, maybe even some scattered upper 70s across Oklahoma and northern Texas there, where we do have the 15% chance highlighted there. And then across Dixie, we do have some 60s and 70s. As we now go overnight there into now Saturday, we're seeing some pretty good temperatures there to sustain some severe weather on day 5 here across portions of the Gulf Coast and Southeast. Looking at some pretty good temperatures, some mid 70s, possibly some upper 70s there. So looking at some pretty good conditions there for high Cape, leading to the threat there for some scatters to possibly even severe thunderstorms. But let's go ahead now and look at the relative humidity here, see exactly how humid the atmosphere will be and whether it's going to be sustain or be variable for severe weather development. So we do have some pretty widespread 90s and as well even getting to 100 across specifically where we are watching for that severe weather. So we have some pretty dry conditions there towards the west and some pretty dry conditions towards the east here. So it's kind of a little bit perfect here, right where we have that Gulf moisture kind of pushing in there across the Gulf Coast. There you got that kind of cold air coming from the Rockies. Kind of got that low pressure right there. You got the cold front kind of coming in, or at least let them do that. Kind of the cold front kind of bring that cold air to the backside, and that warmer kind of going to the north. So it's a perfect condition there for some severe weather, and that humidity is just proving it right there at some widespread 90s and as well as some pretty common 99, 100% humidity there across portions of the South Central and Gulf Coast there. As we go later on now overnight to around 9 o'clock, the continued increase and even widespread upper 90s and even nearly 100% across at least a lot of eastern Texas, much of northern and central Louisiana, and portions of even as far east as Mississippi there. So we're really watching out for some severe weather across those areas like I just mentioned there. And as we know, go even past midnight here at 1 8 in the morning here Eastern time, so 12 Central time. That humidity is going to continue to increase there, all the way from Central Texas there to portion of Western Georgia, getting at least 95% humidity, but some widespread 99%, 97%, and 100% there. That's going to continue to be a trend there as we go into Saturday, or at least the next day for some weather on day 5. Some widespread 90s and as well as some upper 80s across the region here. So overall, pretty widespread favorable conditions, at least humidity-wise and temperature-wise for severe weather. But let's go ahead now and look at the Cape values here and exactly how those temperatures, humidity will affect the numbers or values of the Cape values here for portions of South Central and Dixie Alley. So this is a look here at 9 in the morning here on Friday, already getting up to as high as 2,000 joules per kilogram across Central Texas. But let's now go later and now to 3 o'clock Eastern time here to 2 o'clock Central time across Texas and the portion of South Central, seeing as high as 2,300 joules per kilogram there around 2 o'clock across portions of Oklahoma there, Texas, and again, even the southern portion of the state there. So Oklahoma, Texas, going to be seeing the best conditions there, Cape Valley-wise, for severe weather on day 4. You can kind of see we gradually go up to now into the evening hours and after like kind of around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. That's when the Cape Valley is going to start increasing dramatically, going to get as high as 3,900 joules per kilogram across portions of South Central Texas and some widespread 2,000 to 3,000. So like I did say, the best chance for severe weather to ramp up will be in the late hours here, getting around the I'd say after 7, 8 o'clock Central Time is when things, Eastern Time, when things will start to get interesting here. As you get to 2 a.m., some widespread upper 3,000 there across Central and Eastern Texas, and some widespread 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram. And as we, of course, get to Saturday, that severe weather will continue moving eastward, getting up to 4,600 joules per kilogram across Central and Southern Mississippi there, and some widespread 2,000 to 3,000 and 3,000. And again, that'll continue throughout Saturday. Let's go ahead and look at the upper wind here and see, look at the 850 millibar wind speed here. You can kind of see some pretty good low-level jet kind of coming from the southwest. They're bringing some really nice amounts of shear. And of course, it's kind of as it meets with that kind of that those Gulf winds and that low-level jet, to really bring out a pretty big area, possibly some spin in the atmosphere across board the South Central. And of course, you got the cold air rushing in, that dry cold air from the Rockies. So, I mean, with this shear building up, it's going to be just really good conditions. They're going to get as high as this is going to be 8 a.m. on Friday, so pretty early. They're going to already get possibly anywhere from 40 to possibly 45 knots there across portions of Oklahoma and Texas. So some decent wind shear there. And as we go later on here into the afternoon, into the overnight hours there, into Friday around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and see some pretty good amount of shear there across portions, specifically Louisiana, getting up to 75 knots there. It's pretty good shear there as well to Mississippi and Louisiana in general. Going to get over 50 knots of shear, some pretty good shear as well across portions of the East Central. Texas getting anywhere from 30 to possibly 50 knots as well. So it's going to kind of be scattered across the area. And go throughout Saturday, you're going to be seeing some really extreme shear, specifically across portions of Dixie Alley there, Alabama, Georgia, going to get possibly up to 89 knots, actually specifically 89.4 knots. I mean, that's just very, very high numbers there for shear values. But let's go ahead and look at the surface here, 925 millibars, and see what this is showing here. So getting into now, let's go around 8 o'clock here on Friday. Gonna get some pretty good amount of shear. They're getting as high as 57 knots there across southeastern Texas, with some widespread upper 30s and lower and mid 40s. As we go now later on, of course, overnight, big threats there across Dixie Alley. We're going to be seeing some really high humidity values, some good temperatures, very high amounts of shear. Like I said, look at 67.6 knots on the surface. So really high shear in general. With this event, let's go ahead and last but not least look at the K index here, kind of measuring the probability in general for severe weather. And these numbers, of course, as you would infer, are going to be pretty high. There's some widespread 30s, and as well getting as high as 42 or even 41 there across Texas. And that'll continue to be a trend there across Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, and Mississippi there on Friday night. And of course, going to be really watching out for these areas here on Saturday, specifically the late morning hours and early afternoon across portions of the Gulf Coast there. Look at 2 o'clock, some widespread mid 30s to lower 30s, and even as high as possibly a 40.3 there. So keep a very close eye on for some pretty good severe weather. So let's go ahead and get a look at some standings before we end the video here, so we can get a better look at here how much cap. So first thing, we're looking at the cap, and that'd be clicking some certain regions here. Look at the standings here and see, look at the Hodder graphs, look at the SCUT chart, etc. So you can kind of see we're missing some pretty high cap values across portions of Oklahoma there and portions of northeastern Texas. And it's going to be in the mid-afternoon hours here for Friday across portions of Central Texas there, or across Central Time here. So it's going to be really watching out here for the mid-afternoon to see some storms to blow up there, specifically for Central Texas and as well portions of Louisiana. So you can kind of see very high cap values here across eastern Texas there and portions of western Oklahoma. So you can kind of see we're not going to be seeing really any severe weather development there across those areas. You can see very high cap within that region, even though we're missing some pretty good temperatures. But the main threat really be watching out possibly for an enhanced frisk will most likely be, in my opinion, Central Texas there, and even portions of the eastern Texas. We do have actually possibly a small tornado threat here, and we're seeing some pretty good lifted index there. But again, we're not going to see anything too crazy until once we get later into the overnight hours. So it's going to kind of be the mid-afternoon hours. But once we get later into the evening hours, getting around possibly 6, 7, 8 o'clock Central Time, that's when things will start to get a little bit better on the readings here. So getting still pretty low cap, 1,000 joules per kilogram, still pretty low there, but we're seeing some pretty unstable atmosphere there with -7 on the lifted the LCL there. Looking at some decent on the lower side, some relative velocities on a little bit on the lower side. So we're not going to be seeing perfect readings here across eastern Texas, or at least central Texas, but let's go towards kind of the south central portion of the state there. You can kind of see a little bit better readings there. 1900 Cape, still not too good. Source of helicity, still seeing some decent lifted index there at -9. Critical angle is pretty good. The storm leaking is pretty good as well. It's basically almost a C there. So it's a, if it weren't for the low storm relative helicity, it would be a decent little, that would be a decent reading there. But as we go later now into Saturday, so going to be getting the overnight hours, that's when things are going to be a little bit more interesting here. Once we get a little bit more towards the east, actually, let me do that again. Once we get a little bit more toward the east there, just outside Houston, we seeing possibly a small there threat for possibly at least favorable conditions there for some tornadoes. As you go, again, the main threat is going to be really watching out for basically Central Texas. We do have 2600 Cape there, -29 cap, very good there. Looking at 7.2 on the supercell composite, SCP at 2.1. Lifted index there at -10, so really unstable atmosphere. So we're really mainly, like I just say, cutting the overnight hours across portions. The Central Texas is going to be the main threat for tornadoes. We're not going to be seeing a widespread tornado threat. We could possibly really watch out specifically for Texas and maybe a little bit overnight there across portions of Louisiana, maybe for some scattered storms here. But it's going to be mainly capped out across portions of Louisiana to the east here. So we're really be watching out mainly for Texas there. So Texas is going to definitely be seeing the biggest threat for severe weather, specifically for an enhanced risk, and specifically as well for a tornado threat here. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and see you guys later.